The specter of wildfire-inspired California power outages again looms large this week as Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E, the company with a government-granted virtual monopoly over the wholesale electric market in California, announced potential fire-created outages across the Golden State. And so is the tenacious attempt by politicians to avoid the two key realities behind the power outages and fires. I'll give you the lowdown. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRCTV, and here are the two big lessons to pull from this story. The first is that the bulk of recent California wildfires have started and spread over mismanaged government-run lands that are host to spark-shedding, government-blessed power corporation lines. And the second is that government shouldn't be running or so-called owning these lands in the first place. As NBC's Alicia Victoria Lozano reports, quote, "The bootleg fire in southern Oregon doubled in size Saturday to nearly 77,000 acres in the Fremont-Winema National Forest, interrupting 3 electrical lines that transmit power from Oregon to California," energy officials said. As a result, California lost thousands of megawatts of imported power and struggled to maintain operating reserves as temperatures soared to triple digits in parts of the state, end quote. And of course, with this news, we get fed the obligatory climate change narrative, a grim, politically driven fairy tale that repeatedly has been shown to involve manipulated data, so-called scientists communicating with each other about how to manipulate that data, and the thirst for a worldwide carbon tax that will feed government string pullers even more than they already get fed. Reports New York State's press Republican, the commissioner of the New York Department of Conservation is, as he has in previous years, sending personnel to Oregon to fight the fire. And he's promoting, yeah, you got it, the climate change boogeyman. Quote, "As climate change continues to drive wildfires that threaten communities throughout the West, New York State stands ready to assist our fellow states with expertise that our firefighters then bring back home to help with future emergency responses," end quote. Yes, climate change. As I mentioned in a May 17th piece, much of the fire trouble experienced in the West is tied to the fact that the land is government controlled. The bulk of the wildfires start and spread in these areas. And there's an additional factor that ought to be understood. As I noted in a 2019 piece, quote, "The core and majority of PG&E's power lines run above government-owned and mismanaged land. As numerous commentators have observed, the lack of private property ownership, control, and real liability for management of land has led to a shocking history of fires in California and elsewhere in the U.S. The government won't go out of business if it causes damage to other people's property through the mismanagement of land it claims as its own," end quote. And real-time maps of California wildfires show this correlation. Now the phenomenon appears to be revealing itself in the California power problem that is itself being caused by fires in Oregon that have started in federal so-called forest land, where, of course, you got it, power lines are set up. You know, in a private property paradigm that actually allowed for land ownership and for private business liability for power provision, the odds of reckless land management would be much lower because there would be financial disincentives attached to poor husbandry. But even as Washington, D.C. debates possibly placing the eco-terrorist-tied Tracy Stone Manning in charge of the Federal Bureau of Land Management, don't expect anyone in Congress to talk about the politics or economics of the wildfires. And don't expect any of them to talk about the other most glaring aspect of the Oregon fire: the fact that the U.S. government has absolutely no constitutional power to own so-called national forests. This is a lesson we can take with us and share with others. Here we go. The U.S. Constitution allows the feds to control only 3 kinds of land. The first is the 10 square mile district in which the seat of the federal government is to be located. It's a parcel that is not supposed to be turned into a state because of the potential political influence that it might have on Congress. That rule can be found in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Constitution. The second type of land the feds can run, according to their rules, is the property for federal military bases termed garrisons. And the third are the federal territories. And when a territory is admitted into the Union as spelled out in Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2, it's supposed to enter with all of the reserved powers of any other state. In other words, it's not supposed to cede land to the feds to so-called be managed. It was the 1906 Antiquities Act that subverted this clear constitutional system. Proponents claim that the 1906 federal statute vests the president with the power to establish national monuments and for Congress to create national parks. But there's simply no power enumerated in the Constitution for any of it. And no one in his or her right mind would claim that nearly half of the land west of the Mississippi River is a so-called federal garrison. As Leonard Gilroy reported for Reason in 2010, quote, "The federal government owns nearly 30% of all the land in the country. In the West, those numbers soar even higher. The federal government controls more than 84% of the land in Nevada, more than 50% of the land in Alaska, Utah, Oregon, and Idaho, and more than 40% of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Wyoming." End quote. None of it is constitutional. And even if the Constitution allowed for this kind of land takeover, it wouldn't be ethical or wise. A person can gain wisdom by many means, but a key method is learning from past errors. The government control of land, which is consistently mismanaged and has no incentive for handling property, and the government manipulation of energy provision as well, from insane subsidies for wind and solar to the granting of near monopolies to corporations like PG&E, these are errors from which the politicians actually could learn. But they don't. We can. And we can share that information with others. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. You know, sometimes this is the kind of thing that can change the future. We can get frustrated about it now. We see some terrible things happening in these government-managed so-called lands, but we can derive some lessons and pass them on to friends. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope you'll share these videos with others and come back every once in a while. Let a couple months pass and say, you know, I'm going to go back and find that video and see if I can share it with a few other folks. You'll find our videos on YouTube, and if you're watching there, thank you for liking and subscribing if you're so inclined, and for going over to Rumble. Sign up over at Rumble. You can always watch them without signing up, but if you sign up, it's great. We get more subscribers. We love that. And you'll find all our videos housed there as well, just in case anything happens that you know what to. You'll also find us at MRCTV.org all the time, and please visit our Facebook page. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.